This past week, I prepped 18 freezer to crockpot or freezer to oven dinners in one day to make summertime cooking for our family of 6 just a little bit easier. And I want to share them all with you today. This day of freezer meal prep started out early with a grocery delivery, but if I'm honest, it actually started the day before when I planned out all the meals that I was planning to make it just as easy and quick as possible. So the first meals that I started with were all chicken dishes. So I trimmed up and prepped all of my chicken at once so that I could simply add them to each freezer bag, as I put the recipes together. So this first one is a sweet potato chicken curry, and I will have links to all of the recipes that I've used down in the description box below. Some I followed to a T, and some I made some little tweaks as I went. But essentially for this recipe, I put together all of the spices and liquids in a bowl, tossed that into my freezer bag, and then layered on the chicken and the sweet potato. This recipe I would serve the day of with some rice on the side, and if I want to add in an extra veggie like some broccoli or green beans, I could do that as well. As I was putting this recipe together, I did forget the tomato paste, so I had to open the bag back up and put that in there. But with everything in it, I just closed it up, gave it a good shake, and I made 2 of these recipes. And the day of, when I plan to serve it, you will also add a can of coconut milk, so I made sure to have 2 of those on hand ready to go. For my next recipe, this one could not be easier. It is simply barbecue chicken. So to the chicken, I added a little salt, a little onion powder, and a little garlic powder. And then I just layered on 2 different barbecue sauces that we enjoy. Like I said, couldn't be easier. And once this one is ready, I would serve with either some cornbread. I do have a couple boxes of that on hand because I can easily doctor that up with some of my own ingredients. Or I could serve with some fresh garden corn on the cob, or a cucumber salad, or even just rice or a potato. This next recipe is for Gou Jang Chicken, which is a really delicious Korean chili sauce. I found it at Walmart, so it's pretty readily available. So again, I just put together the sauce, which had some brown sugar, some soy sauce, rice vinegar, and then I also called for some fresh minced ginger and garlic and onion. Now, I will note that I did mark each of my bags with the name of whatever dinner was inside, but I didn't put down any specific information about what temperature to cook it at, high, low, how many hours, things like that. I sort of have a rule of thumb with how long to cook each of these recipes, and I've pretty much made all of them before. But that is definitely a tip if you want to not have to think about anything the day of. You can write down all that information on the freezer bag. This next recipe is for pineapple pork tenderloin, and this one is really delicious. It just has a combination of a few spices and some soy sauce, and of course the pineapple. My pork tenderloin came 2 to a package, so just keep that in mind if you have a smaller tenderloin, or you could even go for some sort of pork shoulder, or a lot of different cuts of pork would work with this recipe. So again, putting the sauce together, just combining the oils and all the seasonings, and then layering the other more wet ingredients on top. Another thing to think about when preparing these freezer dinners is to pull them out of the freezer the night before, put it in the refrigerator, or if you just don't have the time, you're kind of rushing, you could put the frozen bag in some hot water to start to thaw it, just to get it loose out of the bag, and then put it into the crock pot. If it's frozen solid, obviously give it a little extra time, but otherwise it shouldn't take too much longer than the regular recipe calls for. This next one is a white chicken chili, and I'm making 2 of these as well. This is actually one of our family's favorite recipes. My husband prefers this one to regular chili that calls for like beef and tomato sauce. He really likes the white chicken chili, so we make it fairly often, and it's such an easy and really delicious recipe. For this crockpot meal, you will add some softened cream cheese and then either some half and half or heavy cream at the end of the cooking time. So about the last half hour, you add in those final ingredients. So again, that's something that you could mark on the bag. I am also adding the chicken stock to the bag. Normally I would just leave this out, and for other recipes I do, and then I would just add it in the day of. But it didn't call for a ton of broth, so it wasn't going to fill my bag completely. So I added it in here, but that is something to keep in mind. I pretty much always have chicken stock on hand, so I didn't have to add it, but I decided just to do it anyways. For these next 2 recipes, I am cooking a couple packages of ground beef because it is going to make 4 different meals. So I'm just going to go ahead and cook them all together in the same pot, and then I'm going to season all of it with salt and onion powder and Italian seasoning. And then for half of it, I will take it out and then add the cumin and the chili powder, because I am going to be making 2 lasagnas with this, as well as 2 packages of taco meat that I can turn into tacos or nachos or something else later on. So again, for the taco meat, I did remove about 6 cups, I think, because about 3 cups makes a serving for our family. So to that seasoned meat, I added the cumin and the chili powder. And then I realized that I pretty much always use turmeric as well in my taco meat, so I added some of that as well. It gives it good color as well as good flavor. And of course, you could use a seasoning mix if you have that on hand to make this even easier. Then to the rest of the meat that was still left in the pot, I added a 20-ounce can of tomato sauce as well as a can of tomato paste to make essentially my own meat sauce. You could again use jarred tomato sauce, pasta sauce, marinara, whatever you have on hand to make lasagna sauce, but that's just what I chose to do. Again, added a little extra Italian seasoning and a little bit of honey. I find that it helps to cut the acidity, especially since I was using just straight tomato products from the can. I let that pot simmer for a little while I got all of the taco meat packaged up. I did wind up adjusting these bags to make them a little more equal, but if you had a smaller family size, you could definitely prep a smaller portion, but I think this is going to work out really well for us. For the lasagna, I did need to shred up some mozzarella cheese. Again, you could buy it pre-shredded if you'd like. I just find that this is really simple and easy with our food processor. It has the shredding attachment, so that is generally what we like to do to shred our own cheese. I chopped up a handful of some fresh parsley to add to the cheese mixture. So it's just a large container of ricotta cheese because I am making 2 lasagnas. Then I added a little salt and 2 eggs and a little bit of the mozzarella cheese. If you had some Parmesan cheese, that would also be really great in here. I just didn't have any on hand. And then I just went ahead and layered my lasagnas. Now the lasagna, I probably wouldn't cook in the crock pot, although I think you can. I have never tried it, but I think if you just thawed it enough to pop it out of this tin foil, you might be able to put it in the slow cooker and cook it until it is cooked through and warmed through. But I plan to just pop this in the oven. And again, that's something that I could write on the tin foil on the top just to make it easy on myself the day of. But the temperature and time will vary depending on if I am baking it totally from frozen solid or if I let it thaw a little bit in the fridge before baking. So it does vary. And again, some of these other recipes, they could also be done in the oven, in say a Dutch oven, or done on the stovetop in a Dutch oven. If I'm really pressed for time, I could make it go a little faster that way. This next recipe is for tortellini soup, and this is one that comes together so easily. The ingredients, the base ingredients are pretty simple. Again, it's going to be all linked down below. And then towards the end of the cooking time, that's when you will add in the frozen tortellini as well as some heavy cream. So it's about the last 30 minutes or so that you add in those ingredients. And I definitely am taking a little help from the grocery store here with the tortellini. It's not something I typically buy, so it's a little bit different for our family, and it just makes it really easy. I'm also swapping out some beef kielbasa for the Italian sausage. I have some family members that aren't crazy about Italian sausage, so that is another ingredient you could use. I'm just going to swap it out for the kielbasa. So for this last recipe, this is honey soy chicken. It could not be easier, and it is so delicious. It's like Chinese food takeout, but we can have it at home, way less expensive, and it is just ready to go in my freezer. So it is a sweeter recipe. It has a little brown sugar and a little honey, and then some soy sauce and rice vinegar. Again, you put the whole thing together just in one container to make the sauce, pour it over the chicken, and then when it is getting closer to being finished in the crock pot, you will add a little bit of cornstarch at the end to help to thicken it up. That is optional, you don't have to, but it does help the sauce kind of come together. And then you can top with sesame seeds and serve with broccoli or some other veggie that you have on hand. Now, if you are keeping track, I know that is only 16 meals, because the last two that I'm considering a meal is that I stocked up on some cheese raviolis to also have as a really easy dinner with some prepared sauce. I could make a meat sauce, pair them with a salad or some veggies, and we are good to go. Well, thank you so much for being here. If you are new to my channel, be sure to stick around and subscribe, and I'll be talking to you soon. Take care.